Welcome to the Animation Station Podcast, your home for discussions and debates about all things animation. Each week, we'll rank, review, and revel in animated shows from yesterday and today, and from around the world. So grab your Acme slingshot, set your mobile suit to autopilot, and put on your mouse ears. The Animation Station Podcast begins now.
Last chance for requests. Do you just want to see a Super Saiyan, or should I take it up to the next level?
The higher up sure do take it easy. Makes you think we're on a pleasure line. Speaking of, where's Hughes? I don't like him out of sight.
And while I find that orange head of yours disagreeable, I will ignore it for the moment. What I cannot ignore is a boy who would wear a girl's uniform to school.
Don't be a fool. I have your woman, Panish. Her life depends on your decision. Open this gate or she dies where she stands.
You aren't able to see my power so you feel secure, but it's everywhere, even in the air you breathe. Why don't you make things easier and submit?
Who is this mysterious Saiyan warrior that now darkens the skies with his presence? Next time on Dragon Ball Z.
All right, guys, we have a special guest today. Joining us is the extremely talented Kyle Hebert.
Hello! Welcome, Kyle. We really appreciate you coming on and talking with us, and we're really excited to hear what you have to say about what you do and everything you love about it. And Josh, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, well, first off, Kyle, tell us about yourself. Like, how did you get into voice acting, everything like that?
Sure. Well, right now I'm a 47-year-old man-child, much like Kevin Smith, who I'm a big fan of, and I actually do some voice work for his podcast. But
nice.
I got to start in an interest in voice acting as a young child. I was probably 8, 9 years old, maybe even 7. And my dad would, turn on Bugs Bunny, Looney Tunes stuff on Saturday mornings or even on weekday mornings. And he told me that Mel Blanc was this gentleman that voiced all these classic characters, and I thought, wow, that sounds like the coolest job in the world. So even though I was like devastatingly shy and everything, I had a cassette recorder and a turntable back in the 70s, so I would sit there and pretend to have my own radio station and do parody commercials and silly voices and stuff. And I said, man, I really want to grow up and do this sort of thing. And I had an equal interest in radio broadcasting too. And the allure is that I can entertain and inhabit the world of a character without people looking at me,
Right.
Helping that whole theater of the mind thing. I was also fascinated by old school radio dramas, Orson Welles fooling, part of the country in 1938 with the Halloween War of the Worlds broadcast. And
absolutely.
The Shadow and things like that, before TV kicked on. A lot of people on TV were radio stars first and foremost, and that was pretty fascinating. And I ended up getting a broadcast degree from University of North Texas, right outside of Dallas, and got an internship with a radio network where I got to be a DJ. Eventually, went from part-time and then full-time on Radio Disney from 1996. So I got to be on the ground level of building that format. And being on the air, doing a presentation that was very much akin to Jim Carrey and Robin Williams if they had a child. So just all over the place. I was writing and producing radio dramas, doing character voice and everything. And then Dragon Ball Z comes along, and I had been reading about it in a magazine that's now defunct called Animerica. And it seemed really interesting to me because I'd always liked anime, even before that was the term that was referred to. Everything was just cartoons in the 70s, whether they brought over Speed Racer and dubbed it, or Star Blazers and Battle of the Planets, Robotech, and the first iteration of Voltron, all this stuff. I loved growing up. And, when Dragon Ball Z came along, that fascinated me because this was the first show that I'd really seen where characters, might start off as children, and then they grow up, you see their adventures, then they get married, then they have children, and they, it's something, a dynamic you don't see in the likes of, say, Peanuts, Charlie Brown, or The Simpsons, Family Guy.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone just remains the same age.
Everyone kind of same age the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was intrigued by that, fell in love with it before it was on Toonami. Dragon Ball Z was airing the first 2 seasons over and over, basically, in the Canadian English dub. And
was that the Blue Ocean one?
Yeah, that is correct, yeah. Or what is referred to as that. Scott McNeil swears there's no such thing as the Ocean Group, but, that talent pool in Vancouver, call them what you will. So, yeah, Scott McNeil was my first Piccolo, and Brian Drummond was my first Vegeta, and there's like 4 or 5 different Gokus.
Right.
It's like Peter Columbus and Kirby Murrow and Ian, and then Sean Schemmel, of course, in Texas when they took over in '99. Fast forward to the summer of 2000. My radio station hears about marketing promotion stuff, and they say, "Hey, Kyle, we know you're dying to do voice acting. Guess what? This big company here in town, Funimation, has a open casting call." They're like, "Whoa, dream come true!" So I went in, tried out for Gohan, the high school version, and they hired me immediately. Pretty much like 2 weeks later, I was doing bit part voices because of the lip sync issue. You gotta.
Oh, yeah.
You got to be able to act and take direction and, of course, match the lip sync, which is a technical skill that not all actors can really handle. And I guess I faked them out enough. I didn't really have an acting background. But they did consider Radio Disney a good format for that, since I was doing character-oriented stuff there with radio dramas and being on the air and whatnot. So that was awesome. And then I got to take over the role of Gohan from Stephanie Nadolny at the time when the character grew up and was going to high school. Then next thing you know, I become the narrator too. I inherit that role. And then I take over Ox King when we start doing Dragon Ball. And just went all from there, just kind of a big domino effect. Dragon Ball Z opened a lot of doors for a lot of different shows.
Nice. Now, you said you were a fan of anime before. Do you have a favorite anime that you used to watch or anything when you were growing up, or even just like a favorite like cartoon show or anything like that?
Well, in terms of anime, when I grew up, when I was probably 5, 6, 7 years old, it was all about Speed Racer. And then this little independent movie called Star Wars comes out and shapes the future of pop culture in the late 70s. And then there was a mad dash to license Japanese shows for the U.S. And, of course, they butchered the original translations and made everything sci-fi oriented to hook the Star Wars fans. So they took, an action-oriented show, Gotcha Man, and redubbed it with, Casey Kasem and some other great voice talent in the 70s to turn it into a Star Wars sci-fi type universe. And I fell in love with that. That was Battle of the Planets, as it was known back then. And we had Star Blazers, which was, Battleship Yamato brought over to the States. Again, cashing in on the whole space phenomenon in sci-fi. When I got to high school in the early 80s, Robotech and Voltron came along. And, in the late 80s, the world turned upside down for Akira, or as we all call it, Akira.
Totally.
Yeah. I fell in love with things like before there was a glut of vampire anime. I loved Vampire Hunter D. This was before even Hellsing.
Oh yeah,
that is good. I've seen that.
Yeah, and Bloodlust, the just beautiful animated movie that came out in English as its original language. What? And yeah, it just all through the years, a lot of these shows really just entrenched me in the enjoyment. The fascination of the art form is that, of course the animation is beautiful. It's far more textured and detailed. And of course the characters and the storytelling, they really are much more complex and thoroughly engrossing in a way that a lot of people that don't give anime a fair crack, they'll just say, oh, it's just it's nerdy and weird. It's like, no, come on, you got to give it a shot. I mean, anime has a huge influence on American animation. Batman, the animated series of the 90s, was definitely took a big anime thing. And, of course, Avatar, The Last Airbender.
And you go with Teen Titans now.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's basically an anime, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got Puffy, Ami and Yumi to do the intro for it, which is like straight Japanese.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. So, I've had different favorites through the years. Cowboy Bebop is one of those I try to turn non-anime fan friends to us, like, hey, watch this show. I mean, even if you don't like anime, you're going to fall in love with the characters and the stories. And hey, that's all self-contained, basically, every episode. So just pop one in and watch it. Just see what you think. Another great one's Full Metal Alchemist, of course. You know, you can hook a lot of people. Just great stories right from the get-go.
Yeah, absolutely. So, interestingly enough, we actually kicked off our podcast, our premiere episode. We did the Cowboy Bebop movie as our discussion point. So
fantastic.
We're big fans of that one. Yeah, it's a good starter anime for a lot of people. I think it's what got me interested in anime in the first place. So
good. Yeah, everyone needs that gateway drug.
Yeah, definitely. So Kyle, I want to ask you a little bit about your method, I guess, because not coming from an acting background and jumping into this world of voice acting, like, how do you approach a role? How do you prepare for it? What kinds of things do you do to step into a character?
Well, I don't really have a technique per se, because again, I didn't come from an acting background. Mine started in broadcasting, but I've taken acting classes since then. And I know there's different techniques to all that. I kind of just zone in, and I'm used to the interesting challenge during the audition process where basically you're given one piece of paper, or nowadays, of course, it's just on your computer or iPad, a piece of copy that shows, some different lines of dialogue that show a range of emotion. Maybe there's like one or two pictures of the character and a paragraph that summarizes, basically everything the actor absolutely needs to know about that character, how they fit into the story and all that. Dare I say, some audition copy tells you too much, honestly. It's like, you don't really have to know the dynamics like you're reading a book or watching a movie. You don't have to know everything that happens when you're trying out for a character. You just need to know, I need to dial into that particular character. What does he look like? What is his disposition? What does he do for a living? Is he really refined and intelligent, or is he like kind of rough around the edges? Is he battle worn, or is he just kind of like a newbie and naive and ignorant? You can kind of get a sense of that from the audition copy, which are all from, plucked from different scenes in the series. So when you're doing the audition, it's kind of just a quick compilation, saying, can this actor we've never heard before, or maybe have, and think he might be good for this role, are they able to give a consistent performance and, portray anger or neutrality or happiness or whatnot? A lot of video games now will ask for fight reactions and death screams and power-up yells and all that on top of the lines that show the range of emotion too. So I have just learned, basically trial by fire through the years, just be used to that fun challenge of cold reading, and using improv to help kind of build a character.
Now, when you go in, like when they give you your, kind of like your basic outline, do you try to relate to your character any? Like, do you try to get in their head, or? I mean, You try to kind of inhabit their space. Absolutely, see where they're coming from. Now, I know a lot of method actors will try to, themselves just like, I am that character, and they live and breathe it and just annoy their friends. But I can't do that. I mean, I break character the second the take's over, and then me and the director are usually cracking jokes and all that. But everyone is so professional and wonderfully talented in this business. Everyone from the writers to the engineers, the directors, the post-producers, everyone on every side of the mic, and the creators, of course, bringing shows such as anime to a worldwide audience for us to have this wonderful opportunity to bring it to an English-speaking audience. Kind of going off of that, with this growing, market for voice actors, do you find it's harder to land roles now, or do they just kind of go off your body of work? They're like, oh yeah, we know he's Gohan and Kamina, we've got him. Or like how does that resume type thing work?
Well, believe it or not, there actually isn't necessarily a lot of momentum based on someone's resume. That will help raise an eyebrow, perhaps, with a casting person when they're saying, well, does this person have any experience? And they'll say, oh, yeah, let's go ahead and bring him in and read him for something. Or nowadays, most talent are expected to be able to record from home. So yeah, I've noticed that even though having these great things on the resume, it's not like all the doors open up and suddenly I'm super established and working all the time. Absolutely not. I mean, the eye-opening myth-buster truth about this occupation is there's not a lot of fortune. Maybe fame to a degree in the convention circuit, and of course, thanks to social media, we're able to connect with fans and on the convention circuit and everything. But not on the huge level of movie and TV celebritydom. I mean, it's shy of that. But yes, it's absolutely competitive, and but it's not as competitive as the on-camera world. You know, think about it. Someone that wants to do acting on stage or on camera, they are hired not only based on their activity, but for their looks. And it's so much more freeing to look any way you want and have that not be a determining factor. You know, it's like, can this person be believable in their performance? And, you know, by God, I could sit there in my underwear or at the session just look all scraggly and not shave for 4 days. And who cares? Because no one's seeing me except the engineer and the director. I mean, yeah, of course, we have nice hygiene, and we do that. But, I mean, conceivably, you know, they're not going to make those decisions based on, well, we'll hire Kyle because he's a stud. It's like, no, voice actors don't typically look like their roles.
Now, is there any, like, I know there's some bleed through, like, with some, you know, kind of like more Hollywood-esque actors coming in and doing a lot of voiceovers. Because I had heard on some other podcasts where, you know, you would have somebody come in and they would take a role away from someone who is like, you know, that is their career as a voice actor. Has that happened to you or anything close to that? Or have you not had the fortune of that happen yet? I don't know why I said not have the fortune. That's a weird way to put that.
Or the misfortune, yeah.
Yeah,
it's a controversial kind of point of contention with people that do this for a living that aren't from the on-camera world, you know. We're saying, especially for the people that work in animation and voiceover for our video games, we're saying, hey, you know, people don't go see these things based on a name. I get it for live action movies, and Hollywood, of course, is justified in helping get a name attached to help sell it and market it and everything and build an audience. I totally appreciate that. But with animation, especially things that are geared towards families or little kids, you think they're going to care that they got celebrities on Shrek? And you know, and what a waste of money when you think about it. I mean, not that their performances are necessarily bad, but is Cameron Diaz's performance in that worth $25 million? I mean, come on. I mean, and this whole love affair with celebrities kind of rebirthed in the early 90s when Robin Williams was hired on Aladdin, and he was given a mere pittance. I think $75,000, which is a lot of money to you and I, but given the amount that, you know, a big monolith corporation like Disney has, they ended up, you know, settling because he did sue them for a while. It's like, hey, man, you guys are making bank off this. And then you've had so many failed experiments where they spent all these millions of dollars to get names, and then the story or the performance was just not there, and the audience wasn't there. Yeah,
like Beowulf with Angelina.
Right, yeah, beautifully animated and everything.
Yeah, it looked nice, but it was just, ugh.
Yeah, you even had Neil Gaiman, you know, one of my favorite comic book authors, do the screenplay for it. But alas, you can't necessarily catch lightning in a bottle, even with all the A names attached to it. So, yeah, I have worked on what are called scratch tracks for projects where the producers are very honest from the get-go, and they'll say, we're just recording these voice tracks as reference point for the animators. We're going to seek out celebrity casts, so you will not be heard in the final mix. But they'll still pay us for our time. So I've had that happen several times, so of course I'm not insulted. The producers were very straightforward about that. And, you know, people usually ask me what's my favorite thing that I've ever done, and I'll say, hey, man, Wreck-It Ralph. I got to be my character Ryu from Street Fighter on that because I was Ryu in Street Fighter. You know, Disney surpassed, thank God for Rich Moore and the writers. They said, hey, let's get the original voice talent because we're gaming fans. We know the fans want to hear that original voice. They're not going to want to hear Tom Cruise as Sonic and all that stuff. You know, let's not stunt cast. and that was the right thing to do. People love that story, that movie, and I was just like, pinching myself forever that I was like, oh my, holy crap, I got to be on a Disney movie. And they came to me because I just happened to be that character in that game, and yay for cameos, man.
Now, is it easier
amazing.
doing a voice for like a character in a video game, or is it easier when you actually have, an actual like anime or movie
Like
that
a
you're
real
going to be
story.
doing? Yeah, like an actual story, instead of just kind of doing like efforts.
Well, I mean, with anime dubs, of course, you see the final animation done right in front of you. The downside, of course, is they can't shift and alter the animation to fit your performance. You have to make your performance fit into the animation. With cartoons, the animation's not done yet, so you have a little more wiggle room, but you don't see what the characters look like necessarily. You might see a sketch or something, but the animation's going to take place over Korea or something over a year or two, or maybe 3 or 4 years even. I remember recording for Marvel's Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. I recorded as Super Skrull for like 1 episode. And then 3 years later, the episode finally airs on Disney XD.
Wow.
And they didn't show me a picture of the character. They just said, this is a Marvel canon character, so feel free to Google it and look up, some reference points. And I just, okay, I have no idea what he looks like, but I sort of know. And they kind of
look up a character who was last drawn in the 70s,
Yeah.
We'll completely change him.
Yeah. It's like, when they always try... You think of writers pitching movies and TV ideas in the studio, and they always say, "Oh, it's Die Hard on a boat." They'll say, "Okay, Super Skrull is Space Hulk." I'm like, "Okay, all right, I got that. Let's just go with a really, really basic sort of. Okay, this guy screams a lot. He's rage issues. Okay, good." So there you go. But it's so much more fun to record an animated, a domestic animated thing, a cartoon, or an animated movie, because you have your whole cast there, or at least part of the cast. Everyone is there in the same room, kind of like doing a radio drama, scene by scene, playing off each other's performance. You get to watch everyone else perform and screw up. And it's hilarious,
Nice.
Especially if it's a comedy. You get to watch geniuses at work, lift the words off the page and give them, take 1, and then they make it even funnier in take 2 or 3. And then everyone's just crying, laughing. It's just magic, and you can't believe that you're getting paid to do something like that. But with video games too, that's also a solo effort, just like with dubbing. For a different technical reason, though. With animation, you have to match the visual lip sync, and in video games, you have to match the audio sync of the Japanese audio track. Or you don't have a visual reference. The animation's not done yet. So basically, you're looking at an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document up on a screen, or maybe an iPad, or if it's a paper script, then it's this huge 3-ring binder. I recorded for Guild Wars 2 a few years back, and the entire script for the game was in like 5 phone book sized binders, just loaded with scripts and characters. I had 3 non-playable characters with tons of dialogue. I mean, that game took so long to record that every 6 months I'd have a new 4-hour session to come back to these characters. And luckily they keep a reference track. It's like, okay, today you're playing your characters you did 6 months ago, and like, first world problem. Oh, you work so much you forget what they sound like. Well, they'll play you the sample. And it's like, here, Pete and repeat. I'm like, okay, I'm back at this ogre thing, or this demon voice, or I'm the crazy drill sergeant, or whatever it takes. And you're doing like 3 takes of each line for a video game, and you just do the dialogue first, and then the fight and effort and screams last, because that's the stuff that really shreds your vocal cords.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So you talked a minute ago about, those experiences of, comedians and acting together, and it getting really funny and fun in the studio. Do you have any good, funny stories that have happened while recording, either bloopers or jokes or pranks played on each other, or any fun stories like that?
I don't remember necessarily a particular instance, other than like, man, if you have gas and you go in the booth and you try to like sneak, do a one cheek sneak, Those microphones are so sensitive, man. They'll hear everything.
Oh,
and
my
the
God.
engineers will use that as blackmail. Basically, that's like, oh, he farted. And you're in this, this little confined space, or
Right.
it's usually like, muffled and airtight and everything. So you let one go, you're going to stew in your own smell for a while. Take a while to dissipate. And of course, we do cold reads of this stuff, unless it's like a cartoon script, and you might get it ahead of time. With anime and games, you're not seeing this stuff until the second you're in there. So you have to have great cold reading skills. The director's basically telling you what's happening there in the session. Maybe take a minute or two to catch you up to speed, then you're off and running. So you're seeing these lines for the first time. You're performing them, trying to make it sound natural. And of course, we make tons of bloopers and F-bombs and all this stuff and outtakes that never see the light of day, usually because they're so X-rated,
Right,
but
right.
Sometimes, if you're lucky, you'll attend a Comic-Con panel or an Anime Con, and maybe some actor or director has managed to smuggle some outtakes just for a panel there, or play some at an 18-plus panel. It's like, nobody record this. This will take our jobs away. But listen to us totally blow these takes.
Nice.
Yeah.
So a little while ago, you talked about the character you were on Wreck-It Ralph when you played Ryu. Is that your favorite character that you voiced, or do you have another real favorite that you've done?
Well, I love being the narrator and Gohan on Dragon Ball Z, because those things really opened doors for me in terms of voice acting and getting on the convention circuit. I've been so fortunate not only to do something I've wanted to do since I was a kid, but break into the industry on a show I'm already a huge fan of. And then suddenly I get to travel the world and get the rock star treatment, man. It's
wow.
like so amazing. I am so blessed to do this and get to meet with the fans, hang out with them, see the world, eat amazing food, see amazing places. Yeah, it's just so cool and flattering. And I never imagined that wonderful side effect of having positives, affecting people in some positive way, whether it's just simple entertainment or maybe helping them through depression or dealing with real life struggles. And, I've heard from, everything from Make-A-Wish people to soldiers stationed abroad, man, say playing the game or watching your shows, hearing your performance helped get me through a tough time or a loss of a friend or a family member or whatnot. It's like, or your character was so inspiring, it led me to my career choice. And of course, you meet tons of people with the lights in their eyes they're super passionate and interested in voiceover or getting involved in some sort of creative realm, whether it's art or writing, directing, producing, audio production, engineering, all sorts of stuff. It's so great to see that spur off of something that we get to be a part of.
That's awesome. Now,
Thank you.
is there a show that really just kind of touches you, like that you voiced on, or that people constantly come up to you and ask about? Is it DBZ?
Well, DBZ, of course, is still a big thing because Super, of course, now is airing on Toonami. We got Kai the Final Chapters, so we're giving people something they've been waiting for a long time. It's not just that, but I tell you something through the years that I never thought. I mean, I knew it was cool and very inspirational, but I had no idea that it would affect so many lives. It is Gurren Lagann with Kami.
Oh yeah, man, episode 8. It's wrenches your heart out.
Yeah. I mean, I was misty-eyed in the booth because they told me when I got the character, they said, "Don't get too thrilled because he's not in the whole series. He's gonna spoiler alert. He's gonna go take a dirt nap for a while."
Oh man.
So yeah, when I saw how well written it was and just a great character piece, all the characters. I mean, just a show that defies just being, it's just a mecha show or whatever. It's like, no, it's so much deeper than that. I mean, it's so much, fun and everything, but what an inspirational character and what an honor to get to play that in English. It's unreal. So that one's made a huge difference for so many people I've met on the convention scene, and I'm really pleased I got to perform that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like when I first saw that you were going to be on, I was like, oh my gosh, we got Kamina. Like, probably one of my all-time favorite anime characters.
Oh, fantastic! And I see cosplayers around the world doing Gurren Lagann. A lot of Kamina, a lot of Simone, a lot of, Yoko, everybody. Everyone, everywhere. This show has affected things in every walk of life, and I've sent so many autographs on the big, Team Gurren logo, the big wall banner.
That I'm contemplating getting that, like, as a tattoo. Like, that's probably going to be what I'm going with on the shoulder. I was like, I really want that so much,
dude.
Just because it's such a part of my childhood.
Yeah, and I thought about that too, because it's so awesome looking. Even if you don't know what it is, it's just a really striking image.
It still looks cool. Yeah, it's like a half skull with glasses.
Yeah, exactly.
It's freaking dope.
Now, who was first? I guess Charizard was first. Now, did the makers of Gurren Lagann watch Pokemon and decide to lift or Squirtle's glasses? Charizard. It's like,
I would think so. Yeah, Squirtle would have been first. Yeah.
Squirtle, yeah.
That's amazing.
That's where Kamina got him from. Like, before he went underground, he was like, "Hey, Squirrel, I need these, thanks."
That's right, and I go through, my worlds mesh together because it's like, okay, so he's got Squirtle's glasses, and then eventually I got to become a younger Professor Oak on Pokemon.
Oh, that's right, yeah, in the Origins, right?
Origins, yeah. And then a couple new guys on the YouTube series Generations. So it's like, wow, I've been in a lot of things that mean a lot to a lot of people. I mean, that seems like it'd be very stressful because that's a lot of responsibility.
Right.
But man, it's so much fun.
So Kyle, if you were to survey the landscape of anime and animation,
sure,
and look at shows or movies that you haven't worked on, is there something out there that you're drooling to get on? Some show that you really want to be a part of, or some character that you'd love to get the chance to voice?
I want to do more superhero stuff. Definitely. I've gotten to in the game realm and a little bit for the Marvel stuff that's not airing anymore. But, man, I could die happy if I got to do something in a Batman cartoon. It wouldn't even have to be Batman.
Nice.
Because Kevin Conroy is Batman. I don't want to be compared to Batman.
Maybe like a Shazam type character.
Any honestly, I mean, I'm not DC or Marvel. I'd be like, everything. I'm greedy. Like, whatever, man. I want to do it all. Star Wars. I'm a huge Star Wars nerd, so I've tried out for Clone Wars. Cool. That never happened. I tried out for Rebels. I'm still crossing my fingers. I'm friends with Steve Bloom, so hopefully maybe he's gotten the producers to like listen to my auditions faster, which I'm very, very thankful for. But it hasn't been meant to be just yet. I'm sticking to my guns though. If I could even be a blip on the Star Wars universe radar, if it's just bit part voices on the movies or the cartoons. Getting to work with Andrea Romano, who directed a lot of the Arkham games in the Batman animated series and stuff. She's a legend. She's on the verge of retiring. And it's like, no, don't take my bucket list director away.
All right, Kyle, one movie that's out there on the horizon for us that we are incredibly excited about is the movie that has taken many other countries by storm already, and we're waiting for it to come here, and that's Your Name. Can you talk to us a little bit about your experience on that movie?
Like I was describing what the session is like, I was only learning then, or when I first saw the audition copy, what basically the plot was, and during my session, which was over the course of 2 sessions, working with Stephanie Shea, directing me, and hearing that this was such a huge project, and it's like, oh man, I always try to bring 110% because this is my profession, man. I have a strong work ethic, and I always want to give my all and make sure that the fans are getting something worthy in English to match the Japanese counterpart. And seeing the press after recording the show is really where I thought, oh my God, this thing stands to make, it's already busted records in Japan. Is now the number one anime of all time.
Number one, yeah.
Yep.
And now with April, we've got this big theatrical release in sub and dub, thanks to Funimation. And yeah, I'm pretty stoked. I've heard that it's a very emotional, sentimental sort of story. And Stephanie and Mike Sinner-Nicholas, who I've worked with both of them on Gundam Unicorn in the past and some other shows, have both they've been just applauding. They just love the performances in there, and I was so appreciative and beyond flattered to be on something that is poised to really strike with a big fandom.
Yeah, we can't hardly wait, man. We are just
I remember when it
filled
first
with
came
anticipation.
out. When it first came out, I read a little bit about it
Mm-hmm.
because it was one of those where it's like, oh well, it's a new anime film. We're not going to get it for 2 years because that's usually the turn. Like that used to be like a ways ago. That was the turnaround where we wouldn't get anything for a while. But Funimation has like really stepped up everything, like with all their simuldubs. So stuff is premiering in Japan, and we're getting it like 2 weeks later, fully dubbed.
That's
like,
amazing.
First episodes. It's fantastic.
I think between the simuldubs and how well Dragon Ball, the last 2 movies did in theatrical release, even a limited theatrical release, made a lot of money. It was like number 5 at the box office when it came out, and sold out screenings and everything. It's also opened up the doors for other titles to get limited screenings. You know, Sailor Moon, Naruto, some things through Fathom Events, and you know, premieres and all sorts of stuff that I didn't really think was going to be a thing. I thought anime was pretty much just going to be relegated to home video and Cartoon Network, but reaching theaters and of course, you know, nothing really beats being in a house full of other fans and everyone cheering and getting into the emotion of the characters and story. I mean, the electricity in the air is so hard to replicate.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's cool to see anime grow and become more and more mainstream. You know, on this podcast, Josh here is the anime guy, and he's well versed and well experienced in it.
Yeah.
Whereas me, I'm still trying to learn that world. I come from much more of a feature animation background, and you know, anime is something that I'm still trying to discover. But it's cool that opportunities like that are so much more readily available now, and you know, companies like Funimation and Crunchyroll and you know others are just making that so possible to get into something that can seem very daunting from the outside if you've never really, you know, dipped your toe into that pool.
Well, yeah, and if you grow up on a steady diet of cartoons, you quickly see how different a culture, the way that anime tells its stories and everything. You know, what we would consider a climax, you know, build to this big epic thing, they usually are, you know, done very differently in Japan, and stories that would be done differently here. Now, you know, then you have the hybrid thing where shows and titles like Ghost in the Shell, you know, Hollywood takes a crack at it, and sure, they're going to Hollywoodize, you know, that and have big action scenes and, you know, stuff that maybe in the series, you know, that was more heady and more ethereal and not necessarily a big action set piece, but you know, so far I think translating anime into live action, of course, has not yielded positive results. Dragon Ball Evolution.
Agreed.
Oh man, the only good like representation I've seen of a live action anime was probably the newest Rurouni Kenshin.
I've heard wonderful things about that, yeah, but everything else, not so much.
Oh god, that Attack on Titan. Oh man, that was a disaster.
Yeah, and I don't know that Full Metal Alchemist is going to be all that much better, you know.
Yeah, if maybe it's a hope thing. It's a hope. Like the same thing with Sword Art, because I think they were trying to make that into like an actual series instead of a movie.
Oh,
so
okay. Like
I
a
think
mini-series?
if you do it like that, you know, you can delve into characters more instead of trying to cram everything into
one movie.
90 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then of course there's also the uphill battle of video game interpretations into live action. You know, Assassin's Creed just crashed and burned.
Yeah.
It's hard to name a really enthralling, fantastic, classic video game movie. I mean, Resident Evil's cheesy and fun and all, but...
yeah, maybe the first Resident Evil was kind of close.
I suppose.
Kinda.
I like the atmosphere in Silent Hill movie, but they kind of veered off and did their own.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh man. Oh Kyle, this has been great. I mean, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys, and I am so grateful to fans around the world and your listeners that continue to help anime thrive in our culture, and especially with the political times as they are, we need escapist entertainment. So
yeah, absolutely. So Kyle, yeah, we just want to say a big thank you from us and our listeners. And where can our listeners find you on social media? And you know, maybe if you're going to be in any conventions coming up, like where can they see Kyle?
All right. Well, my last name is pronounced Hebert, but it is spelled HeBKYLE, KyleHebert.com for convention appearance updates and project updates as well. My social media is at Kyle Hebert on Twitter and Instagram, and I have a fan page on Facebook.com/Kyle Hebert VO. And I'm really, really active on Twitter and to a lesser degree on Facebook, but, you know, I love Twitter and Instagram. I love social media, and thankful that it's out there. I eat it up. I'm a big tech nerd and love all that stuff.
That's great. We'll make sure we'll have links in our posts to all of those as well.
Thank you.
So our fans can connect with you if they aren't already.
All right. Yep. Awesome. Look forward to hearing from everyone.
And Gavin, where can everybody find you?
Well, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Gavin Audison Art.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Josh L. Kane. You can follow the show on Twitter at Animate Podcast and on Instagram at Animation Station Podcast. You can find us on Facebook at Animation Station Podcast, and we've got that Tumblr that just
Tumblr's out there.
It's still there. It just does its thing, you know.
You can also go to the website. The website is animationstationpodcast.com. You can listen to our episodes there or on iTunes and Stitcher.
All right, again, Kyle, thanks so much. We'll have you on whenever you want to talk about anything, man.
Rock and roll, sir. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. For the Animation Station Podcast, I'm Josh.
I'm Gavin.
Bye, everybody.
Ba-da-boom.
Thank you for listening to the Animation Station Podcast. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Animation Station Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Animate Podcast. Subscribe to us on iTunes and join the conversation at SecretSuperheroClub.com, where you can connect with our podcast friends, Cloud City Cast, Getting Into Comics, and Shaun of the Gathering.